Falefono II and welcome to a bulletin for BCN News. Leading our news tonight, Premier Honourable Dalton Tangilangi and Director General of Health and Social Services, Gayleen Tasmania, spoke with Esther Pavihi on Radio Sunshine on Tuesday morning to inform the public that 2 new cases of COVID-19 have been detected in MIQ after the Day 7 testing on Monday. As of yesterday's Day 9 testing results, the number of active cases remains at 6. Director General Gayleen Tasmania says that 2 MIQ facilities have been placed in essential lockdown due to the 2 new COVID cases identified in MIQ.
Currently we have two sites that are of interest to us because these are the sites where we have the cases. And unless we have more information, right now the protocol in place is that the places become locked down, basically. Was the last thing we want is for this virus to get out into the community. We will do our best to investigate further. What we don't know is whether these new cases developed here in Niue, meaning there was transmission within the MIQ facility, or that they had just been incubating the virus and have only just turned up. Now the biggest difference also is that Day 3 testing was last Thursday, and then we tested on Day 7. So there's a 4-day window where we don't have information. So they could have tested positive Day 4, 5, or 6. We're not sure. So we just have to tread cautiously. Again, we're going by the overly cautious approach, and that to us means we have to provide a lockdown for those places where the new cases have been identified. So for now, unless we have more information, and we will, especially come Wednesday when we have our Day 9 test, we'll have a better idea of the direction of the virus.
There are no new cases of COVID-19 in MIQ after Day 9 tests yesterday. In a press release last night, Premier Honourable Dalton Tangilangi says the positive case at Homofisi and other passengers will remain in managed isolation quarantine facilities. The passengers at Namukulu Cottages will be released on Monday next week after completing 14 days of managed isolation. All other MIQ facilities at Nick's apartments at Tamakotanga, Kololi's guest house at Alofi, Taukefales at Lakepa, and the 2 home quarantine facilities at Alofi South were released earlier today. According to the government press release statement last night, all 6 positive cases remain asymptomatic. The government continues to advise that there are strictly no visitors to Homofisi. All remaining MIQ residents are required to continue to follow isolation instructions. The inaugural Niue Talo Festival was held last Friday at the Niue Golf and Sports Club, hosted by the Niue Growers Association and the Department of DAF. This is the first festival of its kind for the island, as in seen on the day. Many people enjoyed the Niue Talo and Talo cuisines. Here's more on that story. According to the speeches of the day by growers, Niue has a total of 52 varieties of taro. The 4 main categories judged on the day include the talo lawila, talo manua, talo manganonu, and talo fase. The festival also included a showcase of the different Niue cuisines made from taro, such as the takihi, polotalo, and holotalo. A total of 48 growers registered their names for the festival, and 100 Niue taro dishes were entered on the day. The 2 most outstanding taro farmers of the day, mentioned in most of the final results for winners of the festival, were Tony Aholima and San Juan Talangi. Topping all categories for the taro farmer of the inaugural Niue Taro Festival 2022 went to Tony Aholima, second place to San Juan Talangi, and third placing went to Enterprise Mautama. Some of the other prize categories for the Woman Taro Farmer of the Day 2022, sponsored by New Zealand High Commission Helen Tana. First equal went to Asale Taiva and Poini Taufitu. And first place with the farmer with the most taro varieties went to San Juan Talangi. Director of the Department of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries, Boy Okesene, says that a Niue Talo book is a potential goal for the department.
We don't have a Niue Taro book at this point in time. So we are working towards that, and maybe in the next few years we will be able to launch the Niue Taro book for Niue. As we all know, Niue Taro is regarded as the best in the Pacific, and no doubt about it. And we want to promote Niue Taro. As you can see, the letter that was also distributed for all of you to read, and also to note also the objectives of this day, to be able to support mainly for food security. Taro has been a staple crop for food security in Niue for many, many years.
The government is considering relaxing quarantine requirements in early May, which means passengers may self-isolate in their homes. Premier Dalton Tangilangi said that this is not the quarantine-free travel discussed last year, given the impacts of the new variants like Omicron. Here's more on the story with Esther Pavihi.
Premier Dalton Tangilangi was on the News of the Week radio program last Friday and said that the government is looking to introduce a form of quarantine-free travel for passengers arriving from New Zealand starting on the 3rd of May. But this all depends on the situation in New Zealand, particularly in Auckland. Premier Tangilangi explained that this travel arrangement is not entirely like that of a quarantine-free travel because there is still an expectation that the passengers be isolated, even though they may not be required to stay in managed quarantine facilities. The Premier said that the government is also thinking about the key people like the specialists for the Health Department and the judges for the Niue High Court who have not been able to return to the island since the pandemic and the travel restrictions came into effect 2 years ago.
The Hannan International Airport upgrade project is progressing well according to project manager Craig Smart, but the wet weather is having a great impact. The team is awaiting the arrival of a ship on April 9th next week, Saturday, to bring in materials and equipment for the project. Here's Esther Pavihi with more.
Mr. Craig Smart was on the radio program hosted by the Ministry of Infrastructure on Tuesday this week to provide an update on the progress of the airport upgrade project.
So right at the moment, we're actually slightly bedeviled by the weather and haven't made much progress in the last week because of all the wet weather. But our program is to, between now and the end of August, install the ducting for a new airport lighting system. So we've got a small team of workers who are, when the weather permits, digging a trench and putting in the ducts ready for the power cables to be installed later on. That small team is slowly growing, and we expect to form another team in the next month or so. And then we'll be working on 2 fronts. Another important aspect of our program is on the 9th of April, a special ship arrives bringing the explosives from New Zealand to Niue to help develop the quarry to produce aggregate for the project. We require a large amount of rock to be crushed to make the asphalt. And the first step is to go to Falefono quarry and extricate the rock and then process it. We have a subcontractor coming in called Southern Screenworks who will bring equipment also on the 9th of April ship, which will crush and screen the rock to give us the required grading. Then when the rock has been processed, it will be carted from the quarry to the airport perimeter where it will be placed in a stockpile. And we're going to spend between now and August, September doing that work. So we want to have all the aggregate ready for next year after the wet season when we can recommence the actual asphalt work proper.
He says that the main task at the moment is the airport lighting and generating the aggregate, but they are also working on setting up the project site properly over the coming months.
The New Zealand High Commission has advised that starting from next week, all travellers to and from Niue and New Zealand will be required to complete an online New Zealand Traveller Declaration form. The form will work as an airport arrival pass that will ensure officials that travellers are entitled to enter New Zealand and are eligible for quarantine-free travel. In order to complete the online form, travellers would need their passport details, vaccination letter, and their flight information. Other standard requirements include the pre-departure PCR and RAT test showing proof of negative COVID results. Travelers can also check their eligibility for travel before departing the country through this online form. The form can be found on the New Zealand High Commission to Niue Facebook page or by contacting their office at Tāpeu. Premier Dalton Tangilangi last week confirmed that the government wage subsidies established to help the local businesses buffer the loss of income with the impacts of COVID-19 was suspended by the government in December last year. Here's more on that story.
Premier Tangilangi was on News of the Week radio program last Friday when he confirmed that the wage subsidies was suspended in December last year, and this was to allow the Niue Chamber of Commerce to provide additional information on criteria for businesses who do really need the subsidies. He says that the government's wage subsidies are always available, but from time to time they will need to review it. BCN News reached out to the Chief Executive Officer of the Chamber of Commerce, Catherine Papani, who provided comments. Mrs. Papani responded saying that the Chamber of Commerce have provided the government through the Minister of the Private Sector with the papers needed for continued assistance, especially with the government's wage subsidy. According to Mrs. Papani, local businesses also understand that the government is also going through the same financial strains, so it is good to have an understanding that the government support remains in one form or another, and perhaps the government's wage subsidies in whatever shape or form will be reactivated for some of the businesses that are in real need of it. The Premier, who is also the Minister of Private Sector, has said that the government would continue to try and best support where it can, and it doesn't necessarily have to be in the form of a government wage subsidy, but a more targeted approach to assisting businesses.
Despite the many changes of the dates set for the official opening of Falefono II, Premier Honourable Dalton Tangilangi has now confirmed that the 27th of May will be the official opening with or without the attendance of dignitaries from Wellington.
Now it has been confirmed to the 27th of May, the opening. So this is regardless whether New Zealand will have a representative or not. We're going ahead with it, according to the committee that has been organising or working towards the opening.
Both the Cabinet and Executive staff and the staff of the Legislature have all moved to the new Falefono II building at Halamahanga. The original Falefono at Sialekula in central Alofi is no longer fit for purpose, particularly with the recent heavy rains since the beginning of the year.
Local fisherman Janam Hopotoa went spearfishing last Monday around the coastal areas of Alofi Bay, and during his sea adventures, he had a very rare encounter with a turtle. It's not often that locals are able to encounter a turtle while out at sea, but fortunate Janam was able to capture raw footage of his experience with a turtle.
Yeah, it was a super epic experience encountering a turtle on Monday. So I went out spearing on Monday afternoon, just doing my own thing, going out spearfishing, and I happened to see a turtle in the distance coming up from the drop-off back into the reef, and I decided I've always wanted to have a really good selfie with the turtle, and I have attempted a few times with different turtles, but this one was kind of different. This one was really special. I went up to it and did a bit of an attempt, and as I was holding the camera out like this, I could feel its pectoral fin wipe, just brush on my arm, and it's okay, so it's really, I don't know how to say it, really trusting in a way. So I decided to reach out and just sort of try and cuddle the shell, and it just stayed there, and I was like, oh yes. So just establishing that trust with the turtle was really, really good, and was a super epic experience, that's for sure.
After posting his video on social media, the virality and comments were endless, saying it was beautiful and absolutely amazing.
Yeah, so when I approached it, it looked okay on the surface. The first time I went up to it, it was fine, it was swimming and stuff. And then it decided to go for a bit of a dive. I just kept watching it and then sort of gesturing for it to come up just for fun. And it actually turned around. It turned around and faced me on a 45 and started swimming straight at me. And at about 5 meters away, it stopped. And it was looking at me dead straight to the eye, and it was just going like this. It was trying to push itself up, and I noticed it started to release bubbles, which is unusual for turtles. I as far as I know. And then, he just stood still and was really weak. So I decided, okay, maybe needs a bit of a boost to the surface and stuff. So that's what I gave him. Went down, pushed him up. And I noticed that he was a bit skinny and stuff. So maybe very fatigued or either just lack of food, looking for food coming up into the reef and stuff. But it was an interesting experience having a close-up encounter like that for that long with the turtle. So.
Janam says that he personally hasn't come up with a name for the turtle, but people have started to call it Blessy. Janam explains the meaning of the name.
Came about from, just having that experience, that rare experience, is a sort of like a blessing. And I think in association with the song as well, it was more of the relationship between the song and the name took a bit of a feminine twist in a way from one of the suggestions, so Blessy it was.
Janam hopes to go out spearfishing soon once weather permits, and he hopes to meet his newfound friend Blessy the turtle once again. And that is our news bulletin for tonight. Join us again next week, Tuesday and Thursday, for more of our weekly news. Until then, wishing you all a very good weekend, staying safe and being kind. Nolofua Moimonuina.